Right, let's do it. Welcome back to Part-Time Bodybuilder. This is your host, Holly Jeans. I'm joined today by Destiny Wade. Hi Destiny, thanks for joining me today.
Hi.
Now, Destiny is a fellow bikini competitor. She's also a pediatric nurse and has recently been diagnosed with cervical cancer. So, first of all, how are you doing? It's been a very strange couple of weeks, I can imagine.
Yeah, so I'm now three and a half weeks into my treatment. The first couple of weeks were okay. I think this week is the first week that it's really hit me. Tiredness, extreme fatigue. Some days I literally don't get out of bed until midday. And just really basic things like washing up, cooking is taking a lot of energy. So the first 2 weeks I struggled a lot with sickness, but we've changed around my medication now. So that's improved. So I'm not feeling as sick anymore. It's more the tiredness. And this week especially, I've got quite bad like knee and hip pain, which is very uncomfortable, especially when I'm walking around and stuff. So it's preventing me from being active still. But hopefully that might improve as the weeks go on.
Yeah, I suppose everyone reacts differently and you've just got to kind of go with it.
Yeah.
And so it's been recently, hasn't it, that you got diagnosed? It was towards the end of lockdown.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed June the 17th, after sort of a good solid 4 to 5 months of having concerns. But due to the lockdown, I was never allowed to go in and see my GP. So for 4 months, she diagnosed me with different things over the phone, gave me different antibiotics, but never physically examined me or saw me. So it's frustrating from that point of view that this potentially would have been caught at my smear test, which was due March the 16th. So virtually 4 months later, I was diagnosed. So I would have been diagnosed 4 months earlier if they hadn't have cancelled my smear.
And you had to push quite hard, didn't you? Didn't you end up going into A&E in the end?
Yeah, so March, my smear was cancelled. I raised concerns straight away with my GP when she cancelled it. And she said that at the time I was only 27. And she said that I was extremely low risk to have cervical cancer and that she wouldn't see me. Over the course of, then April and May, I spoke to her 4 times on the phone. And she gave me antibiotics, said it was a infection, said it was this, said it was that. And eventually in the beginning of June, I went to A&E in the end because I was fed up of not getting the answers I wanted. Obviously, it was difficult for the GP, I understand that, but at the same time, I don't think services like that should have stopped because it would have potentially saved me 4 months. So that's sort of where I'm at with the GP situation.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And is it stage 2, am I right in saying?
Yeah, so I actually have, so within cervical cancer has quite a lot of like staging and letters and stuff. So stage 1A and then stage 1B, and then you've got stage 2, stage 2B. So I'm stage 2B, which means that it has spread outside of the cervix, which means that it cannot be operated on. So I couldn't have my tumour removed from the cervix because it had spread into other areas. Potentially, if I had my smear 4 months before when it was due, the tumour might have been a lot smaller and it would have been a stage 1, and then I would have been able to have it operated on, and then I wouldn't have needed to have any more treatment after that. But just unfortunately, by the time I was seen, they said that my tumour was 7 centimetres, and like I said, it spread outside the cervix. So now I have to have the chemo radiation in order to get rid of the tumour.
I think unfortunately we're now seeing the effects of services like that being shut during this time.
Absolutely. I know for a fact that I'm not a single case here. There's hundreds and not even just cancer. So I know so many people that have put things on the back burner, anything from sort of scares of having diabetes or heart problems or broken bones because they're so petrified of going into A&E. I know during this lockdown, my elderly nan had a fall, and it was only my mum who said, I'm taking you to A&E, because she had lots of cuts and we wanted to get her checked out for broken bones. The rest of the family all said, absolutely not, she can't go into the hospital, she's high risk. And I think that's the fear that people have. No one wants to go to A&E. We've seen children, like I say, have accidents, break bones, and not come to A&E for weeks because the parents have sort of said, I don't want to bring my child into that environment. So I feel like the long-term effects of COVID and this lockdown is going to now be, as we're slowly opening up again, we're going to have them people that ignored their symptoms of diabetes, or the people that ignored their heart conditions 2-3 months ago, or all of a sudden going to end up going into hospital now and potentially be in a lot worse situation and have a lot of their health problems that are now irreversible, when before they would have been if they were treated 2-3 months ago. So I think obviously the government decided to lock down the way they did, but I don't think that we should have been sort of told not to go into GP surgeries and not to go into healthcare services, because I think now the problem is we're going to have thousands of people come forward that have now got many issues that are going to cost the NHS a lot more money than what it would have before.
It's striking the balance, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people, it's come from fear that obviously they had to make it serious enough that people took things very seriously and they followed the guidelines. It's a really fine line between following the guidelines and then scaremongering and people being too afraid to leave the house.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we've just said, I think the general population were too afraid to step foot into an A&E. I don't know about other people's GPs, but my GP literally would not open the doors for anyone. They spoke to you through a glass screen, and no matter what you said, I couldn't imagine that they were going to let you through to see a GP. The GPs did all of their triaging over the phone, which sadly then has the consequences of you not seeing someone face to face. You can't quite judge and make that correct decision on what treatment they need. So unfortunately, there's a lot of implications to this moving forward.
Yeah, unfortunately so. So what does it look like? What's your treatment plan?
So my treatment plan moving forward is I get 6 weeks of chemotherapy, which is once a week on a Monday. And this is 2 different types of chemotherapy drugs that I give together. So on a Monday, I have to arrive at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm usually out by about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So it's a full day. And this chemotherapy, or the 2 chemotherapies put together, are for 6 weeks, which I'm now, well, Monday will be week 4. So I've done 3, I'm halfway through. The second part of the treatment, which is kind of seen more to be the more important side of it, is the radiation. So I will continue to have the chemotherapy drug every Monday, but a different chemotherapy drug whilst I start radiation. And then I will have radiation for 6 weeks, and it's Monday to Friday. So it's every single day, obviously apart from weekends. So I'll get weekends off. That's for 6 weeks. And then at the end of that, so at the end of the 12 weeks, I will then have something called brachytherapy, which is basically an internal radiation therapy. So I will have some like metal probes put inside where the tumor is, and that will slowly go off over the course of 3 days. So I will be in a lead-lined room, so because I'll be highly radioactive. I can't have any visitors during that time, and nursing contact would be at a minimum. And during that time, it's quite painful. So I'll have an epidural, and I'll have a morphine pump to keep me comfortable. And then hopefully by the end of that, so the end of like 13 weeks, hopefully the tumor will be completely gone. Anything that's left, if there is anything left, we can then hopefully operate on. But the goal is for all the tumor to be gone by the end of the 13 weeks.
Yeah, and chemo and radiotherapy are very different today in terms of side effects. I've watched my dad go through cancer treatment. He's now 10, 11 years all clear. He had
Wow.
throat cancer, and he had 2 bouts of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So very
Yeah,
similar to yourself, and he experienced very different side
yeah.
effects.
And I think even, I mean, I'm fortunate, or maybe not fortunate enough, that I've been a paediatric nurse for 5 years and I've specialised in cancer. So I am very, very familiar with chemotherapy. I know most things that there is to do with chemotherapy, and especially the side effects. However, it then did make, like, every child is completely different. The same with every adult is completely different. So the symptoms I'm experiencing might have not affected your dad, and vice versa. Your dad might have said, oh, I got really sore mouth, and I'm saying, oh no, my mouth's fine, but I've got really sore knees. So it really does affect people in different ways. And it's the same with the radiation. The radiation obviously would affect me very differently because of the area it's attacking. Whereas with your dad, literally we are like the two opposite ends of the body. So obviously anything in the throat would affect anything up here, whereas obviously mine is the cervix, which is down there. So it's going to be two completely different scales. And how I am 1 week, like I said, the first week of chemotherapy, I felt okay. The second week started to go downhill a bit, but I only had 2 days of feeling unwell. Whereas this week, I've sort of had 3 days of feeling unwell. And I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want it to get more than this. So it's just taking every day as it comes, not planning too much in advance, and just seeing how it goes, really.
And I can imagine that's, like you say, a blessing and a curse that you've seen the other
Yeah.
side of it, because you've got the knowledge, whereas you've seen what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think so. From one side of it, I feel very fortunate that I know a lot about chemotherapy. And when obviously this whole time, I've had to go to every single appointment by myself because of the lockdown. I'm not allowed anyone in with me. And walking in on that first day can be quite daunting. But lucky for me, obviously, I've been in a hospital environment for 8 years, including my training. I'm very familiar, and there's nothing like machines and stuff like that doesn't scare me because I know what they are. Whereas to someone else, being, you know, I'm 28, I live by myself. However, during this time, all I want is my mum with me because it's scary. And I couldn't imagine someone else of my age or younger having to go through all of this by themselves. It's so overwhelming. So in that sense, I'm so fortunate that I already knew that what was coming. But then on the flip side, I think you know too much, and it's really difficult to step out of being a nurse and to be a patient. And when they, like, you almost know too much. So it's like, I know that unfortunately the biggest drop in your bloods is 14 to 21 days after, which would mean why I'm feeling so grotty now. Whereas, say for example, someone else who'd never worked with chemotherapy wouldn't know that, so then they might be a bit concerned about why they're feeling so ill on the third week and just stuff like that, really. So I think from that side of things, it's kind of a blessing. Obviously where I work, it isn't always a great outcome, so that scares me as well. I don't always see the happy endings. I don't always see it being successful. But I think that's the difference between working with kids and with adults, that generally the adults seem to be going into remission a lot better than their children.
Yeah, and I suppose you've seen the other side as well of it being successful. I think the word cancer has such scary connotations, and I know when my dad got diagnosed that the assumption then was the worst.
Yeah.
And I think now it's quite good that I can say to people, no, I've seen him come out the other side, and
Yeah.
he's been fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now with how treatment is, technology, everything like that, that there's so much more they can do. The treatments are, you know, so much more advanced than what they used to be. And as much as I don't feel like mine necessarily was caught early, but early detection obviously does massively change the outcome. And I think more people are more aware. So obviously that's the massive thing that I'm trying to push during my sort of experience, is that I don't want women to fear having a smear test. I don't want women to put it off, because a smear test can literally save your life. And like I keep saying to people, that if I had mine, I might have only needed an operation and I wouldn't now need to have all this life-changing treatment to go with it. So I'm definitely trying to push towards that. But it's the same as just understanding your body, knowing what's right for you. I knew in my gut that something was not right, but I couldn't get in to see anyone. And that's the frustrating thing. But it's persevering with it and knowing that you're right. You know your own body. So if you have anything that you're concerned about and a GP just sort of fobs you off and says, oh, it's just this, it's probably that, but you still aren't happy with that, then still persevere with it. Probably like your dad, he probably didn't go and see the GP for the first time and get diagnosed. He probably went a few times. That tends to be the trend, that you go with a niggling problem, you get pushed back, and then in a couple of weeks or a couple of months it then gets investigated properly. And I think that's the key message to send out to people. Obviously during lockdown we've all sort of focused on this one COVID situation and forgot about everything else that could be possibly wrong. So I think it's just really important to spread the word, especially with women having a smear test. It's like the most important thing that you can do.
Yeah, I've actually just got my letter yesterday. I'm kind of like, where's the last 3 years gone? How did I turn 28?
Yeah, exactly that. And that's the scary thing, that I think this is like the fear I have, is that if you had your smear test cancelled during lockdown, how likely are women to then have the initiative to ring up their GP and say, wait, I need my smear test? I think a lot of women don't particularly like smear tests. And I think we kind of feel like when that letter comes through, okay, fine, I'll do it. But then if yours was cancelled, are you really going to chase it up and say, oh, I really want it done now? No, and you're going to leave it. And it might be 6 months, a year before your GP contacts you again to say, oh, that missed smear test, you need to come in for it. And that could be the difference between catching something early and not. And I know, like, since I've started my Instagram page, I've honestly had thousands of messages from women saying, I've now booked in mine. And I think that's amazing. And on top of that, I have women that message me saying, I booked in after seeing your story and I've now got like pre-cancerous cells and they're going to treat it. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have done it. And that's the difference between catching it early, having to have them, we're going to say lasered, that's the term, but it's not, having them lasered off, and or it progressing into more and needing to have further treatment down the line. I think it's so important to have it done regularly, book it in and get it done. And it literally takes 5 minutes and that's it. And then you don't have to think about it for another 3 years.
Yeah, because you're doing such an amazing job on, you've obviously got your Instagram where you're raising awareness, and you've done several TV interviews recently,
yeah,
as well. Is that the main take-home message that you want people to take from it? You know, yeah, persevere and be persistent if they're concerned, and to get that smear test.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sort of initial thought was, I want people to be aware of their own bodies. If you aren't, like, so the background story for me was, when this all started, I was prepping for a competition. And as we all know, when you're on extremely low calories, a lot of exercise, your periods do go a bit weird. I've prepped twice before and this never happened. So for me, that was my first like alarm bells that, okay, yeah, fair enough, my body's under pressure right now, but this never happened to me the last 2 preps. So why would this happen now? So I think it's just, especially when it comes to women, we put down our periods and stuff like that down to our hormones, which could be affected by stress, upset, diet, any of the above. But actually, I think we shouldn't always just assume that it's that. If you have a gut feeling, so like I said, mine started whilst I was prepping. So even though a few people said to me, oh yeah, but it's normal for your periods to go a bit weird. And I'm like, it is, but that never happened to me before. And I think it's just being aware of what's normal for you, and what's
It's
normal
better
for
to
me
be
is
safe.
normal for you. Yeah, exactly. And I think if you know what's normal for you and something isn't going to plan, then that's when you need to raise the alarm and sort of say, I know it's probably nothing, but please can I just get checked out, or please can you just do a test for me? And I think that's like the take home message, really, that just be aware of your own body and what's normal for you. And no matter what's going on in your outside life, especially with women's health, if something isn't normal, then regardless whether you're stressed, whether you're not eating properly, you still need to go and get it checked. And that's the one thing that I want people to take home from that.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of women are either fearful or embarrassed about talking about
Yeah.
that. I know you put up a story the other day asking people what they were afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, I think normally, first of all, obviously the embarrassment factor. I think a lot of women are embarrassed still.
Yeah.
It's not particularly something you want to go and have done. But like I sort of said, from a nurse's point of view, okay, I'm a pediatric nurse. I don't do smear tests. However, I've wiped plenty of bums in my time. And I can tell you now, I don't actually take notice to what their bum looks like or anything. I just wipe it because it's my job. And it's the same with any healthcare professional, that we don't look at what we're actually doing. We just do the job. So I don't want women to be embarrassed or feel like they're being judged or anything like that, because I can assure you, women, you know, the nurses that do smear tests probably do 8 a day, and they're not judging you amongst all the other ones. They couldn't care less. They just want to get it done and get the next patient in. So I think the embarrassment thing, I think you just need to remember that these nurses, like, they don't care in that sense. And I can tell you now, moving forward, if you did have cancerous cells or needed treatment, you'll be put in a lot more embarrassing positions than you are having a smear test. I mean, when I was being examined, I had 4 doctors in the room all having a look at my tumour because they found it fascinating. And that was a lot more embarrassing than going for a smear test. So I think remembering that they're healthcare professionals, they're not there to judge you, so don't feel embarrassed. And then I think the second thing is obviously the stories that people say about how painful it is. Of course, like we've discussed, everything is different person to person, but my experience and the experience I've heard from most women is it's not painful. It is slightly uncomfortable, but it's not any more uncomfortable than putting an earbud in your ear and getting wax out, sort of thing. Like, you know, and it really does only take 30 seconds. Once you're on the bed and you've got it in place, it literally takes 30 seconds and that's it. So I think it's more just trying to share more positive stories. And I know recently I've been directed to a few Instagram accounts where a couple of women have had smear tests sort of live on their story and stuff like that, or openly spoke about it afterwards. And I think it's more, if we make this a common subject to be able to talk about amongst us women, then hopefully that sort of embarrassment and fear level will come down, rather than it being such a taboo subject that you don't want to talk about it to your friends. You don't want to say to your friend, oh, how was it? Was it all right? Because I've got to have mine done. Because they'd be embarrassed to ask that, because it's not a subject that we openly talk about. Whereas if we make it a subject that we can talk about, post it on your Instagram, I'm going for my smear test today, text your friends and say, oh, I've booked mine, we're about the same age, have you booked yours? Them sort of conversations is what's going to make it like normal amongst us women. And like from this whole journey, obviously, yes, I've had a lot of women message me. However, I've also had men message me saying, I've spoken to my sister, I've spoken to my girlfriend, I've spoken to my mom, and told them, like, I've read your story and I've told them. And that's the important message, that it shouldn't be something we're embarrassed to talk about. And it should just be an open conversation. It should be something we encourage each other to do, definitely.
I mean, I've had one done, my next one's due. I've had exactly the same experience with you, that you're probably in there 10 minutes. It's,
yeah.
like I say, 30 seconds. I wouldn't even say it was particularly uncomfortable. Not a particularly nice thing to have done. But it's important, and like you can say, it's 10 minutes of your life, but it could save your life.
Exactly, it really can. And I think it's a shame that my whole interview didn't get put up on ITV the other day, because I sort of touched upon this fact that as women, we're quite fortunate because we have this screening against cervical cancer, and it's the same, it's not quite the same, but similar with breast cancer. Obviously we can make sure we haven't got any lumps and have a mammogram as a routine as we get older. The same with smear tests, but they're offered to us and we can detect cancer so early. Whereas someone like your dad, if they said to him, oh, there's a throat swab you can do every 3 years to detect throat cancer, he would do it. We all would. If they said, oh, there's a test to detect whether you've got bowel cancer or any cancer, we would all do it. So why were women not wanting to have a smear test? Because it's detecting whether you've got cancerous cells. And if they're caught early, they are very easily treated, and then you're monitored a lot closely to make sure they don't progress. And I think that's the crazy thing in my head, that if someone's giving you an opportunity to almost look in a crystal ball and tell you whether you're going to have cancer in a year's time or not, why would you not want to do that? For the sake of a smear test that you have to be there for 10 minutes, it's 30 seconds, it's a little bit unpleasant, but nothing crazy. Like we should all jump at the chance of doing that. So I think knowing that we've got this opportunity to catch something early and prevent it, surely that's much better than waiting for it to get out of hand and then being in a situation where, you know, like for me, I've now got to have 13 weeks of intense chemo radiation, and the long-term effects on my health is life-changing, basically.
Yeah, definitely. People just need to get them booked in.
Yeah, definitely. That's the message. And like I say, just talk about it like it's a normal conversation. If us women can get comfortable talking about it, then it can be a normal conversation. Like I say, I feel like it's something that is still very like taboo, and like we shouldn't talk about it to each other, but it really is something completely normal. And like you say,
it's a bit like periods.
Yeah.
For a long time,
Yeah.
people felt really uncomfortable talking about periods. I know I did, but I've had a doctor on here recently talking about periods and people losing their periods. And we're getting there with that, but it's still not 100% there.
No.
There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We all us women go through it. And if we've got a partner or, you know, even family members, it's something that happens to all women.
Yeah, it is. And I think, yet again, touching on like the competing side of things, I know in my past, I've had 2 male coaches, and I never felt comfortable enough to speak to them and say, this is what's happening. I'm on my period this week. I'm struggling, or my periods have stopped. Is this normal? I never felt comfortable enough to speak to a male coach. But then when I switched to a female coach, it was a lot more of a normal conversation for both of us. She would ask me questions. Whereas, and like, that's what I'm saying, that moving forward, if us women get comfortable talking about it, then we would feel more comfortable bringing it up. And it's the same thing. How many times have you rung up a GP to talk about your pill and they go, oh, it's Dr. John Smith, and you're like, oh, I didn't want a man.
Yeah.
But why should we not want to talk to a man about it? Because they've still got the same qualifications, and it's the same thing, isn't it? Like, if we can get comfortable talking to our partners about it, or whatever it might be, whatever situation you're in, then we're going to make it a more normal conversation. It's the same with the smear test. I know one of my friends said that she didn't want to book in her smear test because her boss was a man, and she didn't know how to say to her boss that she needed to go in for a smear test. And I was like, that is such a shame. I said, first of all, you just say you've got doctors.
Tell them anyway, you've got doctor's appointment.
Yeah, but she said that her boss would want a letter from the GP to say why she had to go. And I was like, but we should be able to feel comfortable enough to say that to a male, to say, I'm going for a smear test, so I need to go, sorry.
I have to say, I've been in a similar situation with you. I've always had male coaches.
Yeah.
In the end, I talked to my first coach about periods, but I have to say the coach now talks about it very openly, so I've never had a problem talking to him about it. So,
do you think that's made a difference with how you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's what I tried to talk about it more, particularly using this platform, because I want this platform to inform and to touch on every area. I don't want to shy away from anything, and I think periods and women's health is such an important part of bodybuilding.
Absolutely.
We need to talk about it.
Yeah, and I know, like, in the past, I might have spoken to my coaches about contraception and stuff like that, but it was never a conversation that would naturally come up, if that makes sense. And I know obviously there's been a lot of debate in bodybuilding with female contraception and stuff like that, and there's some coaches that would prefer you not to be on it. There's some that just don't ask the question, and I think that's the sort of, if you are going into this industry, you need to be sort of aware of the side effects, let's say, of what competing does to your body. And that's what I said. I knew that my first 2 preps, I lost my periods completely, whereas this time round, I was getting like abnormal bleeding sort of every couple of days, which obviously some of my friends sort of said, oh, it's because you're prepping, you're like 3 weeks out, you are. And I was like, but that's never happened to me before. And I think it's just having that self-awareness, isn't it? Knowing what is right for you, and also being comfortable enough to go to your coach and say, this is really weird, this hasn't happened before. Is it something different to my diet? Is it something different to my training? And having that open like communication definitely makes a massive difference.
And I actually have to say, bodybuilding, I've educated myself a lot more, so sport and things like that. Then, let's say, a lot of my friends or family, I know about all the types of contraception. I know far more about my periods and my health than I would have before.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in all areas of your sort of health and your body, obviously there is the argument yet again that bodybuilding can be quite unhealthy at times. But I think generally when you enter this sport, and you, especially when you compete, you become very aware of your body. And I mentioned this a couple of days ago to someone else, that I have found that through competing, so the first time I competed was 2015, and I had no idea what I was doing, completely uneducated, had no idea what I was doing. Whereas the growth I've made over, let's say, the last 5 years, I feel like mentally and physically, I'm such a strong person, more mentally from the prepping. So, you know, when you're prepping and you get them really dark days where you just want to quit and you don't want to do it anymore and you're starving, but you push yourself to go to the gym, that is you mentally pushing yourself to go and getting you through them dark days. No one else, when you're prepping, it's a solo sport. You don't have a team behind you. You don't have someone that goes, I'll do your cardio today so you can rest. No, you've got to do it for yourself. And I think during this whole process, like as soon as I got my diagnosis, I was like, oh, I'm like 16 weeks out, which to some people just sounds absolutely crazy. But that's how I look at it, that the end is there. It's exactly like a competition prep. You start dieting, you know you're going to have shit days, you know you're going to have good days, but at the same time, you know at the end there's that amazing experience of being able to step on stage and showcase, and you know it's worth it. And that's what I sort of mentally think of it as. I'm going to have my days like today where I don't want to do anything, but then I'm going to have better days. But it's being mentally strong that gets you through the bad days. And I think definitely taking that from bodybuilding has made this whole experience a lot more like manageable, let's say.
I was in the same position as you, that I knew nothing about bodybuilding when I started. But again, I've learned so much about myself. I'm much more confident, I'm much more educated, I'm much more strong. And the community that I've built around me is incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you can take that into other aspects of your life. Like you say, the confidence, exactly the same as me. I mean, I joined a gym and I would literally hide in a corner with like my little dumbbells because I was so like embarrassed and didn't want anyone to talk to me. Whereas now you walk into a gym and you talk to everyone. I think that level of like growth definitely comes from gaining confidence, gaining knowledge as well. Like you say, when I first started, I literally knew nothing. I mean, the fact that I even got through a prep was a miracle because I really was clueless. But I think all of that, having that understanding of your own body, having a much better understanding on health, and the mental sort of mindset of being able to be strong and push yourself through difficult days, I think is just invaluable, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think you learn so much about yourself and what you're capable of.
Yeah, definitely.
And talking a bit about community, because I know one of your coaches, Shannon, has set up a GoFundMe page for you. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Shannon is my previous coach, the one and only woman I've actually ever worked with. And straight from the, like, anyone that's ever come into contact with Shannon, or anyone that's, you know, watched her stories, she is such a positive person to have around you. And when I started with her, the first thing she said was, your health comes first. I would never put anyone in danger of ruining your health. I don't want anyone taking drugs or anything like that. And I definitely feel like that's why me and her sort of clicked. I definitely understand that in prep, sometimes you have to push your body to the limit. But if it comes down to your health or your long-term health, she was not willing to do it. So she is an amazing coach, but not only just a coach, she's an amazing friend. She contacted me pretty much straight away when I told her I was diagnosed, and obviously was there for me from day one, basically. And I shared with her personally that sadly my work will only pay me for 2 months sick pay, which puts a massive strain. My treatment is at least, well, I had an operation as well, so I was off work for 3 weeks. On top of the 13 weeks I have treatment, so 16 weeks in total, and I'm only going to get sick pay for 8 weeks. I live by myself in London, so I have rent to pay, I have bills to pay. You know, I've got to travel into London every day to have my treatment, so I can't not have any income. So she one morning surprised me with a video and said, I've set this up for you, Destiny, I hope you don't mind. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm so touched. Like, it wasn't even something I really thought about. So it's just been amazing, really. She's been there for me the whole way. She messages me every day to see how I am, how I'm getting on with treatment. Obviously, she's helping me promote not only just my GoFundMe page, which is obviously a personal thing for me, but she's helping me promote the message, which is to have your smears done and to look after your health. And as Shannon, as I know her through coaching, I know that that is what she's truly passionate about. She's very strong-minded when it comes to health and overall health. So yeah, she's honestly been amazing. And everyone that's shared like my page, or anyone that's sort of told their friends about my page, and I'm just so grateful. Like I said, there's two sides of it. Obviously there's the GoFundMe page, which is doing amazing, and I'm so grateful for everyone that's donated. But the other side is just following my story. I think I'm someone that people can relate to. I'm 28. I'm a fit, young, active person, goes to the gym every day. I've competed before, and on top of that, I'm a cancer nurse. And I think people can relate to me, and I'm honest with my journey. I'm honest with what I post. And I think if anyone can come on and look at my page and then go, oh yeah, I need to get my smear booked, that's really important. That's all I want. Like I said, just getting the message out there. And I just think it's so amazing that people interact. Like I said, the community, the bodybuilding community is amazing. People like yourself or many other girls that have competed, I feel like you have a connection with them because you have that common interest, and it's almost like you have like this sisterhood of like competitors, and it's so nice to have that. And like I say, especially on Mondays when I'm in the hospital all day, I'm literally on my phone all day with people messaging me, just ask, like, sometimes we talk about treatment, sometimes we talk about bodybuilding, sometimes we just talk about absolute crap that's on telly, you know, and that's what gets me through it. All the lovely messages of support, people asking me how I am. And these are people that I've never met, but through the bodybuilding like community, you feel like you have that connection and you want to support someone. So that's like truly amazing as well.
I think, like we said, until you've been through a prep, you can't truly understand what the person's gone through. So we almost have like a mutual respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would just urge people, obviously get your smear booked, look after your health, but connect with other people and talk to people, because everyone is so willing to help one another.
Absolutely. Like, that's the one thing you can definitely say in bikini, or actually just bodybuilding in general, that it is, I think you instantly have so much respect for someone because you know how hard a prep is. And I think you instantly want to, if you're you competed a few times, but then you get a first timer coming to you asking you for advice, you want to give them that advice, because we know how it felt when we were first timers, and I didn't have anyone to go to ask for advice. I didn't, like, you know, back in 2015 it wasn't such a good community, and actually most of the people that I spoke to about bodybuilding were men. There wasn't so much of the like bikini, and at first I remember being backstage like, oh my god, like, are they going to talk to me? And within like sort of 5 minutes of standing naked getting a spray tan, all of a sudden you realize that you're all in that same position and you all want to talk to each other. And actually girls that I met, so I did PCA Wales in 2015, and I stayed in contact with a couple of the girls, but other girls that I competed with then have contacted me since and said, you won't remember me, but I met you at PCA in 2015 and stuff like that. Like, you don't forget those experiences, them show days when you're backstage feeling as nervous as everyone else is, and some girl offers you her lipstick and you're like, oh, thank you so much, yeah, I lost mine, or whatever. Like, they're the experiences that bond you together. And like I said, you instantly have that community feel. So I think if you are someone that's on Instagram and you follow someone else and you're like, oh, I wish I could ask them about their shoes or their hair or whatever, just reach out to them. Because, or if you just want to ask for advice, or you just want to say to someone, I'm a first timer and I have no idea what I'm doing, or even if you're not a first timer, we're always wanting to learn more, aren't we? So just having that community feel. And like I say, I feel like in like this sort of time with the lockdown and stuff, I feel like people are using social media a lot more to connect, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I've made friends for life through this sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I will tag your GoFundMe page in the show notes for this. Please follow it and donate if you can. Let's rally the community together to support one another. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I think you are absolutely incredible. Sharing your journey, I know, will help so many women, and I just hope that people take something from it, learn something, and put into place some actions to look after their health, really.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Pleasure. And I hope the message can carry on spreading.
Definitely. And I will tag both your Instagram handles in the show notes as well. And you will have to come on when we can give the good news that you are all clear in the mission, and we can talk about bodybuilding then.
Yes, definitely. That would be the plan.